So tensions in Europe between Russia and Ukraine. The EU are getting involved. England's getting involved. Biden's getting involved. Let's decipher this a little bit. And who better to decipher this with than our very own political analyst, one of my favorites, Dr. Nelson Dordelli Rosales, finally on my news hour. Good to see you, Nelson. Honestly, you look well, sir. Thanks for joining me here on Anews. Right, I'm not going to let you get away with this, not lightly. So get ready for some tough questions. I've been talking about nothing but this all week. Right, now EU ministers have met with Ukrainian ministers today. Why? I mean, why is that important? At the end of the day, Russia has a problem with Nato. Why isn't General Secretary John Stoltenberg meeting with Putin? Why do we care that Biden meets with Putin? Give us your take on how things have been developing in the last couple of days.
Well, thank you very much, and looking forward to the tough questions. And of course, on this point, Russia listens to power and listens to strength, and the United States is the military, in terms of military, is one of the strongest across the world. Some people even say is the strongest in military in the world. So definitely Putin will listen to Biden. Unfortunately, we know that that is not happening, that actually Putin has said in a few hours ago that he's not meeting with Biden, saying pretty much closing the diplomatic channels that it was built between Moscow and Washington, which is definitely a sign that we are heading to war.
That's it? Come on. Do you really believe that? Honestly, I mean, first of all, we know Russia economically can't afford a war, nor can the USA right now. I just believe, let's not say me, but many of my analysts that I've interviewed here on Anews all sort of see that Putin's just flexing his muscles. You don't agree?
No, I think sorry to contradict many of your panelists, but I have to say that this is not the case of showing muscle. This is more than that. Definitely, when you have military exercises in Belarus, but then a few weeks ago, Russia said that they will end and their troops were coming back to Moscow or to Russia. Now they're saying they're staying indefinitely. They have 2 nuclear bombers there ready to be launched against Ukraine. They have surrounded Ukraine borders, 160,000 troops. Some people estimate that 190,000 troops, almost 60% of Russia military is on the ground. Definitely, this is more than muscle. And when we saw this weekend at the Munich conference, all member states of the European Union, all members of the G7, and even Ukraine president saying we need to stop a war, that's something very clear that everyone right now is preparing for the worst. And we're seeing the conflict, it just started. We've seen already Russia TV portraying that Ukraine apparently attacked some type of area of Russia, which is not the case. They're already creating this narrative to prepare for an invasion. And this is what is happening right now. And we have to be prepared for a possible war that will scale not only to a border between Ukraine, but perhaps Russia wants to already conquer Kiev.
Okay, that's very worrying now, so honestly. You're not sounding very positive. So these EU ministers that have just met Ukrainian ministers are talking about sanctions. I mean, if maybe it's too late for sanctions, sir, maybe we should get some boots on the ground near them and start moving things forward. Why are they still trying to go with this diplomatic option?
Like always, you always have really good questions, and this is a very good question. And this is the question that President of Ukraine, President Zelensky, actually brought to the conference this weekend in Munich, saying this is the time, now is the time to put sanctions, rather than waiting for a war, or even when Ukraine is already invaded, sanctions will not work. But Secretary Blinken, this weekend, when he was asked the same question, he said that deep diplomacy needs to prevail, and the sanctions are a deterrent. If he imposes sanctions now, or the U.S. or the allies start imposing sanctions, they will lose the possibility to establish some diplomatic solution. This is kind of the nuclear option. And President von der Leyen repeated it today, actually, when she was saying that it's better to wait and hopefully Russia stop. And as you said at the beginning, maybe this is just muscle, and then let's avoid putting the sanctions already in place, which are going to hurt the economy of Russia, but also increase the prices of gas. And perhaps, and that's something that many specialists are saying, the economy in Europe is going to be affected, and even the U.S. is going to be affected. So definitely they want to avoid getting to that path until they have certain evidence that Russia is invading Ukraine.
But you just said that there is evidence that Russia is about to invade Ukraine. You said there are 190,000 troops on the border. You said they've got two nuclear bombers. So who's right here? I mean...
you have a good point, but the thing is, they want to see it in action. They see this...
Well, they want to actually see a gun fired?
Pretty much, yes. That's what everyone is pretty much talking about. The moment that we see and then Ukrainians are saying, but what about cyber attacks? And that's why in this meeting at the council today with the Foreign Ministry of Ukraine, that's why they give a task force, an advisory team from the EU is going to be deployed in Ukraine to fight these cyber attacks. So they're already providing support in that sense. But at the same time, Ukrainians are asking the West that don't wait until you see actual fire, that you see bombers, you see tanks crossing the border, to activate yourself and try to stop Russia invasion. At the same time, the West is saying, we must be careful. Once we put these sanctions into place, there is no coming back from that. We will lose the opportunity to deter Russia, and we'll get into a full conflict with them. So there is this small, and it's almost getting very small window, every time smaller, of diplomacy that they still want to manage, and that's why Blinken and also Biden offered President Putin this summit, or this conversation, this phone call, to avoid this conflict. Macron tried as well, but at the same time, Putin, it seems to me that he already made his mind. He's pretty much having his Security Council meeting right now. He's meeting with his advisors in terms of security, with his Minister of Defense today. So it seems that he made his mind, and he's going to invade Ukraine.
Do you want to speculate when?
It's very difficult to say. Some analysts are saying from the intelligence community that it's just about days. At the same time, I want him to prove me wrong, and everyone wants Putin to prove the whole world wrong and not invade Ukraine and avoid military conflict. But we're talking about hours at this point. We're seeing the massive mobilization of tanks right now, and the fact that they already have this nuclear practices in Belarus, seen both by Putin and Lukashenko. It seems to me that Putin is stopping any type of dialogue, and he's getting fully ahead with this military conflict. We hope, and when I mean we, I think the world hopes that this is the opposite, that we can find a solution, a diplomatic solution, that Russia comes back again to NATO, Russia-NATO Council, and discuss the security concerns that Russia has to try to avoid a conflict. But all indicate that it's the opposite.
Okay, let's break this down a second, Nelson. All right, first of all, do you think, one, that Putin has the upper hand when it comes to the power of energy and being able to cripple perhaps Europe and the US, therefore he's using this to his advantage? Let's go bit by bit. Answer that one first, please.
Okay, so in the terms of gas, and that's why Russia is on the top countries in terms of providing energy. We're talking oil, we're talking gas, and of course they, for sure, when Putin is analyzing this situation, he's considered that at this moment, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Countries are, especially in the West, economically dealing with the situation. There's unemployment. There is a lot of anger in the population as well about the restrictions. And of course, this is the moment for Russia, especially for Vladimir Putin, to start thinking about pretty much changing the international global order. I think that with your question, yes, he thinks that he has the upper hand right now in terms of the gas supply to Europe. And he thinks that the moment that these prices go up because of this possible conflict is actually in the benefit of Russia, and it gives the opportunity for him to invade or even go ahead with a military conflict of war proportions.
Indeed, and it's winter, and we need energy more now it's winter. Okay, moving on. Now, I made a little note about. Now, one of the potential ways of getting into NATO, one of the strict rules is that you don't have any conflicts within your borders, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Putin has been said, I just want guarantees that Ukraine will not be admitted to NATO, right? Ukraine have never said we won't enter. But the European Union and NATO and everyone else have said, oh, we can't give you that guarantee. So that's almost like adding fuel to the fire. But we know that there's problems in Ukraine, in Donbas region, between Russian-backed separatists and Ukrainian forces fighting. So there you go. That's already solved. It seems like all this. That's why I find it so hard to believe that, Russia will pull the trigger and go. There's always a conflict inside Ukraine. It can't join NATO anyway.
Actually, on that front, then I will come back to you with a question. Why Russia? Okay. Why Russia is so concerned about Ukraine joining NATO? And at the same time, does Russia has any type of veto over a particular country's sovereignty if they want to join NATO? Sure. What happens if Finland or Sweden want to join NATO? If we allow Russia, and I mean NATO in this case, allows Russia to say, okay, we're not going to allow Ukraine to get into our club here in NATO, then what stops Russia from saying we don't want Finland to join in, we don't want Sweden to join in? That definitely is something that is not negotiable. And also the fact that they have this conflict, as you mentioned. You put it perfectly when you're saying they said Russian separatists who are supported by the Russian military. Therefore, the conflict is actually inflicted by the Russians. So it means that Ukraine is already at war with Russia. And that's one of the reasons why Ukraine wants to get the support from NATO, because they know that without the support of NATO, unfortunately, they can beat the Russian military. They will fight until the end, but at the same time, by the numbers of tanks and fly jets and the equipment and the expertise, Russia has an upper hand over Ukraine. And that's why the whole world is right now looking at this conflict and waiting to see if Putin goes farther than Ukraine. How about this is the time to get Belarus? He already pretty much conquered Belarus, as he having almost 30,000 troops there, and they are staying indefinitely. At the same time, he can go to Romania, he could go to Poland. This could be a possible war with which a lot of people are even speculating of a third world war.
Wow, Nelson, you scare me. All right. One more. All right. Okay.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, we all scared here in Brussels.
All scared. All right. Okay. Let's dig in a little bit more here. You said with Sweden and Finland, they could also join NATO. Why is NATO growing? NATO was set up defensively against the Russian, the communist regime. I mean, that never happened. The USSR disbanded. NATO went from 12 countries to 30 countries and still growing, moving further east. If you were Russia, sir, wouldn't you be afraid?
Good point and good question. And of course, for the Russian foreign ministry and for Vladimir Putin itself, that's his narrative. He thinks that he should be afraid. But I think it's the opposite. Let's put it this way. Russia have nuclear capabilities. These countries in NATO, of course, why, to answer that question first, why NATO is expanding? It's the same thing for any international organization. It wants to expand, it wants to improve, it wants to actually get better in terms of understanding military capabilities. They all only have, in terms of NATO, only these ones countries who are signing of the treaty, but they also have global partners. We've seen it that they are global partners in different countries, from Colombia to Austria to New Zealand. There's a lot of countries that are global partners of NATO. This is an organization that wants to become a very strong military alliance, but it is in the core of NATO to be a defensive alliance, and they are not doing any military drills in front of Russia. They have been trying to find dialogue. They are open channels with Russia. The Secretary General has said it many, many times that they want to welcome Russia into the Russian NATO Council. They opened that channel. Russia came to the council, put a statement, and even asked for respond to their security concerns. And they were sent by NATO. They sent a letter with all the answering the security concerns, and Russia didn't answer that letter either. So we're seeing that Russia's actions are speaking louder than their words. The fact that they are continuously putting troops near borders, we have to remember that Russia already invaded Georgia, already invaded Ukraine and took Crimea. So we have to think that if a country has invaded other countries, we have to be prepared to avoid another invasion. And that's why NATO is expanding. And I think that in the case of Russia, which is a very vast country, is one of the largest countries in the world, it shouldn't be afraid of, especially when you have a very open channel of communication with NATO.
Let's hope so. Dr. Nelson Rosales, always a pleasure to see you, sir. Thank you so much for joining me. We've sadly run out of time. We could probably talk for days, you and I. But thank you so much for your time, sir. Take care, stay safe. Let's hope there's no war and diplomacy prevails.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Always wonderful to talk to you.
All right.